Our protagonist was an extremely powerful dragon. While trying to defend his home and the weaker beings, he ended up dying at the hands of humans due to their greed and malice. Because of this, he reincarnates, but he is a bit surprised since he has been reborn as a human and not as a dragon again. Now he must learn to walk and use this new body, trying to grow stronger and take revenge on humanity, as all of humanity was responsible for his death. And he is not happy about it at all. So I hope you enjoy this work, because this protagonist is really awesome. Guys, so I hope you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and welcome to the video. The humanity fought against the red dragons, and in the end, he was defeated. He remarked that he had never actually entered human territory. In fact, it was the opposite. For the last 1,000 years, it had always been humans attacking him, sacrificing his flesh and blood, and in the end, he was killed. Perhaps due to his age, he did not remember many details that led to his death. But he only knew that humans hunted him in every way possible, and in the fragments of his memory, there was nothing to suggest that humans just appeared out of nowhere for no reason. He didn't recall having done anything against humanity. They killed his friends and family until no humans were left. In the end, he became the last living dragon. The dragon commented that he had nothing to call his own, and no one to lose either, since he had lost everything. Revenge was the only thing keeping him alive. And as the humans say, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But he mentioned that everything was behind him now because he could finally rest. Until he heard something strange. He wondered what that sound was. A human in front of him. The man said that he was very beautiful while holding him in his arms. He panicked, asking why there was a human holding him. He thought to himself that he had to get out of there immediately, wondering where his wings were and why he had turned into a human. Meanwhile, his father remarked that he was very cute. He thought that he liked him while he cried himself to sleep. He told that disgusting human to let him go, and he ends up remembering a voice saying that since he wanted to die so badly, he would fulfill his wish and reduce him to ashes. While he turned into a baby, his father wondered what he was doing. He simply spat in his father's face, and that was the breath of the dragon. However, it didn't work very well as his father said that was disgusting. The human, who was actually the ancient dragon, wondered what happened to his magic. His mother said to come to mommy, trying to take him, while he wondered what she was going to do with him, until he realized that she just wanted to show him affection, calling him king. He thought that name was ridiculous and not very welcome for the breath of a dragon. He asked his mother if she had any idea who he really was, saying that in the end, the heavens allowed him, a powerful red dragon, to be reborn again, and like it or not, he now had the chance to take revenge on humanity, just as they did with the dragon race. With this human body, he would kill all humans until none remained. And his father commented that even though he was newly born, he had a mischievous face. He remarked that this baby was definitely going to be tough. But then he looked at his father, wondering why he was suddenly so sleepy. He said he was very tired and was almost falling asleep, saying that human bodies were very weak. He ended up dozing off. After some time passed, he discovered many things about humanity. He even knew the names of his parents. After all, calling them short hair and long hair didn't help much. Their names were Scarlet and Jake. They seemed to be really more beautiful than other normal humans. Scarlet's face matched her gentle personality, while the human named Jake had many muscles, and other humans did not seem as strong as his father. The nearby village always visited them and treated him with respect. A man came to visit them, saying that he saved his wife, claiming she would probably have died in the forest, and thanks to Jake, she was alive. Our protagonist remarked that it was because his parents were called adventurers by the humans themselves. His mother ended up asking if he was hungry because she was going to make something for him while he crawled. One of the guys said that her son was very smart, and children that age weren't usually that intelligent. Then one of them asked if it was because of the light, as his hair was hard and seemed a little red, while the other said that his hair started turning red a few days ago, for some unknown reason. And the protagonist felt happy with this information. It was wonderful. The red hair should be proof that he still had hidden power. Those two who had gone to visit ended up leaving, and as they were going out, they wondered if they thought that family Talon was cursed, while the other said that could be the case. Not everyone wanted to be an adventurer, and who knows the dangers they faced, right? The protagonist said that humans seemed to fear his red hair. His grand presence probably intimidated them, while his mother picked him up, saying it was time to eat, calling him little one, and he continued saying that these humans confused him the most. No matter what happened, no matter if they were angry with him, no matter what he tried, they were always smiling at him, even when he was causing trouble, while his father held him, saying that he knew he was a genius because, according to him, he already knew how to aim when he peed. The protagonist thought that if hell existed, it would definitely be like this. We are told that adventurers are rare in that world, and his mother is a mage, which is even rarer. And if he could master the most powerful magic of the future, his revenge would be much easier. He explained that at the age of 2, every child has the opportunity to go through a magical assessment. And on that special day, it was the day to discover if he had mana. While his father wished him good luck in the evaluation as he and his mother were leaving, and he explained that being the reincarnation of a red dragon and the son of a mage, he would surely pass this test. As he was going out, his father saw him leave and began to think that if he recovered his magic, no one could stop him from returning to his peak. After a while, they arrived in the city. While the protagonist was very happy, he said that what worried him the most was this weak body. They went to the central market. Some people talked about some medium-quality beast crystals while the protagonist observed. There were many people while he and his mother passed through. One of the sellers ended up kicking out a guy who was being a nuisance asking for things. The protagonist said it was a tragedy. Even though they were all humans, they despised and mocked the weaker ones. In his previous life, he had the duty to protect the weaker ones. He even worked hard on it. He protected everyone, even though he ultimately failed. The scene cuts to Holland Academy. People formed a huge line for their evaluations. The protagonist said there were so many people while some people in the back cried, saying it would be okay and that the boy would pass. One of the women ended up coming, crying, saying it was unfair because she didn't pass. The protagonist said that the child was very foolish. The world was unfair and always had been. While the man said that the next candidate was King Talon, our protagonist. The guy told him to please go forward while the protagonist said it was finally his turn. The old man told them to sit down, while his mother thanked him. The old man asked him to put his hand on the crystal so he would know if he had magical aptitude, and the crystal would also shine. The color of the shine would indicate the most compatible element with him. The protagonist raised his hands, saying that finally this moment had arrived. The powerful red dragon would make everyone's jaws drop. He ended up touching the crystal while saying that he knew all kinds of magic that existed. His mother instantly began to cry, while he didn't understand why she was crying. Was she furious with his talent for magic? Was she crying with happiness that he had the same magic element as her? But then he realized, wait, the crystal wasn't shining. The old man said that unfortunately, her son did not possess magical aptitude, and the protagonist thought that was absurd, a dragon without magic. He was supposed to be the most powerful of the red dragons in his past life. While his mother asked if he was absolutely sure, as she had graduated from that academy, then her son should have magic. While the protagonist thought they must have made a mistake, that ball should have malfunctioned. The old man said he was very sorry, but he couldn't do anything, while the protagonist spat out his pacifier, saying he must be joking. Who knows, maybe he was the owner of the magic of that world. The boy went crazy. He pulled the old man's beard and started saying, I know magic. He didn't want to accept that he didn't have magical aptitude since he was a dragon. He attacked the old man in every way while he called the guards. Who would have thought that the legendary dragon wouldn't know magic after reincarnating? It was obviously absurd. According to the protagonist, it was a punishment from the heavens for having killed humans, perhaps. But then they left. He was in his mother's arms, saying what was the point of being reincarnated and still not having magic. So it didn't make any sense to him. Then later he said he understood with his eyes shining. The heavens were testing him. It had to be. If he couldn't be a mage, he needed to find another way to take his revenge. After some time, he and his parents were eating, and he called his father, asking him to teach him to fight. He wanted to learn swordsmanship, and his father felt very proud. The protagonist said that was it. He might not have learned magic, but he could still be a swordsman. His dream of revenge would be realized in any way. But it was obvious he knew revenge wouldn't be as easy as he thought. While his father said he would advance on him. It had been 2 years since he had been testing and training swordsmanship with his father, and still, he hadn't won even once. But that would change that day because he was confident. His father charged while he said he still knew this movement. He just needed to seize the opportunity to attack at the exact moment he attacked, and so he could attack from the side. His father charged, jumping, and he said that as he thought he would manage to win. But he ended up tripping and took a hit from his father. He wondered why it always ended up like this. That clumsy body couldn't even keep up with his brain. Those awkward limbs just hindered him. After a while, he was in bed, and his mother said it was great that he had woken up, and she ended up arguing with his father because he was laughing, saying that he couldn't control himself, and he was only 4 years old. But his father argued that there was only 1 year left until the night test, and if it continued like this, he wouldn't pass at all. His mother got a little furious, saying that he was pushing him too hard and that he didn't need to follow in his footsteps. There were many other great jobs besides being an adventurer, but his father spoke with a smile that he wasn't pushing. He seemed clumsy, but it was just because he was very young. He still didn't control his body well and still had a year for them to train. He had to believe he would make it into the Night Academy. The protagonist said he only had a year to enter the academy. Would he really make it? He wasn't very confident, but he told his parents not to worry because he would succeed. Besides, he thought he was the reincarnation of a dragon, so he wasn't just an ordinary human. He said he could definitely do it. He would be the strongest person anywhere in the world. Still, he was much more capable than any human his age. He just needed a little more control. He wondered why the human body was so awkward. He had 4 limbs, but they needed to move separately. It didn't even make sense in his mind. His father ended up arriving, saying that he knew he would be there. He was surprised by his father, who ended up giving him a sword as a gift. He said that this sword was his from that moment on, and he was already old enough to train with a real sword. The protagonist was very surprised, asking if the sword was really his, while his father said it would help him improve his control much faster. And then he leaned into the protagonist's ear, saying that he had another gift for him, while he wondered what it would be. Then they went to the barn, and his father said it was a magical training dummy. The protagonist was surprised by this, while his father said to take it seriously, as this dummy had movements controlled by magic. And this was what the students of the Night Academy used to train apprentices. The protagonist wondered if he was sure because he really didn't believe it was just a dummy, and then his father warned him to attack. So the protagonist prepared. He charged. Level 1 was activated. A system window appeared. The dummy defended against the protagonist's attack, and he was surprised by that, while his wooden sword was thrown away because of the dummy. The system warned that level 1 was deactivated, and the protagonist was very surprised while his father said that wasn't too bad. If he could defeat the level 1 dummy, he guaranteed that he would pass the exam. He even had to pull a lot of strings to get one of these, and he was totally enchanted because now he would improve in an instant. Some time passed, and the protagonist was training. He said that his movements still couldn't keep up with his thoughts, and that human body was very weak. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to defeat that dummy, much less take revenge on humanity. But someone ended up overhearing him say this and asked how he could defeat a dummy. Why did he want to defeat a dummy? The protagonist prepared, asking who was there, but he realized it was just a girl. She asked if he was okay and didn't mean to scare him. She introduced herself as Amy, saying she lived in the village. She mentioned that she had seen him alone, even though it was very late. So she decided to come by to see what was happening. The protagonist felt a bit embarrassed, saying that he got scared a little, and he asked if this place was dangerous. She said it was safe during the day, but it was very close to the forest, and demonic beasts could roam there when it got dark. The protagonist talked about the demonic beasts, saying that she knew quite a bit, but she said not so much. She only knew a few places because she harvested fruits and some other ingredients. She also said it was going to get dark soon, so they had to go down the mountain, asking him to go with her. He said that was fine, and when he was about to say his name, she already knew, saying it was Ray and asking if she was right, as he was already well known in the village. Then the protagonist remembered. It was obvious he was known. His mother and father were adventurers. Besides that, everyone talked about his red hair. No human had ever had red hair in that city before, so he became the strange one. They respected his parents, but they were terrified of him. Perhaps it was because the adults always told scary stories about malevolent red dragons to frighten the children. So red is a color that symbolizes strength and evil in human society. How ironic, right? It was the greedy humans themselves who destroyed his race, but they were portrayed as the villains in the story, and he only retaliated against them for defending himself. But humans saw this as proof of their supposed brutality, even when it wasn't. And the girl asked what the king was doing. They should go down soon, while he said he was going. They started going together. She commented that she always saw him training and asked what he was doing. The protagonist said he wanted to be a swordsman since he didn't have magic. She thought that was amazing and said his father was the only swordsman in the village. Some time passed, and some people ended up arriving, catching the attention of the two. There were 3 boys. One told her to stay away from his little sister, calling him Firehair, but the girl defended Ray, telling her brother that he hadn't done anything wrong. But her brother didn't like that at all and asked why she was hanging out with that redhead. He wanted to know if she had never heard of his curse, which was contagious. The protagonist just stood still while the 2 boys approached him. One of them said that his parents must be crazy, saying they were raising a damned child like him, and the other said they should have just messed with the wrong people to receive a curse like that. They ended up passing by him while he clenched his fists, and his veins pulsed. He called them out, and a punch appeared. An extremely strong punch was thrown by one of them, and the blonde boy was surprised and a little scared. He ended up pushed back. The protagonist told him to get out of his way because he was going to beat up whoever spoke ill of his parents. That guy told him that he knew about his two parents, who were adventurers, and that his father was a swordsman. That's why he knew he had trained a lot, right? And if he wanted to fight, he was up for that challenge. One of them ended up grabbing the sword, and the blonde said he didn't want to use weapons, so he didn't want to kill him. His sister even tried to stop him, while the protagonist said that was great because he wouldn't use one either. He prepared for the fight, saying they could all come at him at once because he didn't even care. They both started to fight while the other two boys cheered for the blonde. In the end, the protagonist ended up taking a beating and asked if he was admitting defeat. The blonde said he was still weak while the protagonist tried to get up. He said it was disappointing. If he had his father's help training and still wasn't anything, he was a total failure since his father was just a normal merchant. And he commented that he should give up on being a swordsman while the protagonist was on the ground, and many things appeared in his mind. Those remarks from people telling him to find something he could do right without fighting. The scene changes, and the girl ends up fighting with her brother, saying he had gone too far. But he said it was that brat's fault and asked his sister to stay far away from that guy from that day on. According to him, he didn't want her to get the curse of red hair, while she screamed that she hated him. And after slapping his head, she left very angry about the situation, and the boy ended up looking at his armor, which was totally deformed because of that punch. He wondered if that was really that guy's punch. His arm would have broken from that first hit, and he would have won the fight instantly. The scene cuts, and the protagonist had arrived home. His mother was radiant as always, saying he had arrived and took a while. She noticed that he had some injuries and asked if he had fought, but he said no, it was just his training. His mother told him not to lie to her, saying those boys had provoked him again, but he denied it, saying he was a man, so there was no problem. His father said that was it. Ray was a man, and it was clear how hard he was working on his training, but his mother didn't like that at all. After a while, it was already nighttime, and the protagonist said he was going to train a little more. Soon they started to battle, and the protagonist thought he had already learned the patterns of the techniques and movements of the dummy. Therefore, he charged with the sword in hand, saying he just had to find a flaw in its defense. But in the end, he ended up hitting a wooden beam. He missed his target, and for that, he was severely punished by that dummy. The next day, the protagonist was going to train again, but then he noticed that girl was there again. She looked a bit down when she saw him, but suddenly she said good morning to him, calling out to him. The protagonist asked her if she had been waiting for him, and she said she just wanted to apologize to him. But the protagonist said she didn't need to, as it wasn't her fault, but she argued it was because of her brother. But the protagonist just said he wasn't good enough, and the girl became a little sad and began to cry. The protagonist remarked that humans really were a lot of work, and he said all right then, he would accept her apology. He began to think that he thought he would have to follow the so-called social norms of humans. He started to eat one of the apples and said he had already accepted her apology, so she didn't need to cry. She ended up thanking him and asked him not to worry because Gary wouldn't bother them anymore. After that day, Amy was always in the same place every day waiting for the protagonist to arrive. Sometimes she would even chatter all day in his ear, while on other occasions she would sit quietly reading a book. Soon after, he got used to having her by his side. The scene cuts to the Talon family's residence. The protagonist's father was furious, asking how the nearby villages had also been attacked by those creatures. The man who was sitting said yes, and there had been no identified witnesses, but they had already had infected victims. And the man said that everyone was still too disoriented to say what had really happened, and that's why they wanted his help. The protagonist's mother said those creatures didn't appear near human settlements, and that was very strange, so she would go with her husband. But he told her not to worry, it was just a reconnaissance mission. Besides, Ray needed to take the test soon, so he needed her to stay to take care of him. He told her not to worry, as he would return as quickly as possible. She said she understood and just asked him to be careful. The scene cuts, and the protagonist thought to himself that he still didn't have enough coordination with that body. He looked back and saw that girl quietly reading her book. He blushed a bit at seeing that, but then he snapped back to reality, telling himself to get a grip. He ended up calling her, saying they would stop for today and head home. The girl said she hadn't noticed since time had passed so quickly. The protagonist asked her if she wasn't afraid of people treating her badly, but she replied that what others thought of her was their problem. She had her own opinions and didn't believe in those ridiculous legends. So what if he was a redhead? It was just a color. and they shouldn't torture or treat him badly because of it. She called his name and said she hoped he didn't care about other people's opinions either, as he had to pave his own way. And then he remembered his own path. While recalling her brother telling him to do something at his level, he wondered why he hadn't thought of that. He ended up thanking her by touching her shoulder, and he left feeling excited, saying they would see each other the next day. After nightfall, he was already with the dummy. He placed the sword in his hand and said he was going to do what he was good at. He would return to being who he was. He ended up saying level 1 activate, activating the dummy, and he began to circle around it. He said he became much more agile when using all of his limbs, just as he had been as a dragon. He declared that at that moment he would jump up, and he landed a blow on that creature while he exclaimed that level 1 was completed, and he became very happy that it had worked. According to him, his father said he would pass the academy if he defeated one of those knights, and now he just had to test his limits. So he said level 2 activate. The next morning, his father was already preparing to leave, while the protagonist said the sun had barely risen, and he was already going out. His father apologized, saying he had received a mission, and he wouldn't return home for a while. But he didn't need to worry as he guaranteed he would return in time to see his exam. With a smile on his face, he told the protagonist to train hard against the training dummy while he was away, as he was sure he would be able to defeat it. But then the protagonist said that in fact, he had already defeated it, only to be interrupted. The protagonist stated he was ready and heading out, asking the protagonist to take good care of his mother, and she would take good care of him. The protagonist said it was fine. Passing the test against a training dummy wasn't anything special, and when he returned, he would leave his father very surprised by his strength. In the meantime, he thought about how excited his father would be. His reaction would be funny. If it weren't for Amy's hint, he wouldn't have discovered that way. And he, a bit thoughtful, said that now he knew how to feel anxious. It was like feeling gratitude for a person. He was becoming more emotionally human. Humans could be irritating, but these three were different. He wouldn't take revenge on them, obviously. After some time, the protagonist went to train, but he noticed that the girl hadn't come by that day. But then he stopped and thought, since when do I need to be happy for her? He said it was nothing special. There was no need to be happy for her. On the contrary, no one was going to disturb his training.